Hello, legends. Have a look at this. Look, there we go. It's all the war criminals together. How ironic! And what better person to get into this with than former para Falklands veteran Mike McCarthy? Let's go. Mike, how you doing?
Great. Good to see you, Chris.
Good, good.
You're looking fit.
Well, yeah, I am quite fit at the moment. Got my heartbeat is down to 40 beats per minute, which is
Wow. Okay.
the last time it was that low, they put me in the emergency room because they thought they hadn't come across anyone with such a low pulse. It was after I ran the length of the country for charity that time.
Well,
And I went up there on something unrelated. I have vertigo of all weird stuff. And when they took my pulse and blood pressure, they put me in that room with all the machines because they said in case you have a heart attack or something, we're all ready. And they said you're not in a like a what was the word they used? You're not like a professional athlete or something, they said. And I said, well, funnily enough, I'm not, but I have just run the length for the UK. They said, that'll do it. So thank you for your compliment. There's me waffling on. But friends, in case you're wondering why I'm so fit, I'm just getting ready for my Mount Everest summit, my expedition will start in April. I am going to summit Mount Everest, not just to shine a light for struggling veterans in the way that I struggled, but also I think I'm pretty much the only person talking about complex PTSD and the link with childhood trauma and how this manifests when we leave the forces and develops in a lot of veterans an inability to cope with civvy street, and unfortunately they take themselves out of the game. So I'm asking, why is the military not talking about this? Why are professionals not talking about this? Why does Hollywood keep trying to brainwash us that PTSD is only something you get if you're in a Rambo movie? And of course the charities aren't going to mention it because it affects their funding. And the military-industrial complex certainly aren't going to mention it because their recruiting pool is significantly from people from underprivileged or backgrounds or turbulent childhoods. So that's my mission, folks. Please help me. If you can spare a $5, I'd absolutely appreciate it. There's a link below. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to go off on one about my Everest trip, but I thought I may as well mention it because we're talking about fitness. Yes, we're here to talk about, let's talk about Tommy Robinson's going to Poland to, I don't know, he normally bashes the Muslims, isn't it? Don't think Tommy's really seeing the bigger picture here, Mike, with respect to the Babylonian woe. We're going to talk about the hypocrisy and also the duality of Remembrance Day. Like, what is it really for? Particularly when it has a moniker of 11-11-11, which is occult symbology, folks, or it's 11's the pyramid number, as they call it. So we're going to talk about that. Then maybe you can enlighten us, Mike, to your the McCarthy plan. which is to deal with this rampant illegal immigration that we've been subjected to here. I know Ireland has been the sort of almost like the testing ground for it. And obviously America have got it bad, as have a lot of Europe. Not all of Europe, because some just say no, we're not letting anyone in, and they seem to have some common sense. But so, in no particular order, Mike, you fought in the Falklands conflict. That was pretty full on. What's your take then of the Remembrance Day and Armistice Day?
Yeah, I think I've always seen through it. I started studying war at the age of 9. Um, yeah, and I know you talk about your PTSD and childhood trauma. And I remember at the age of 9 standing outside my Irish grandmother's house in London, and they'd left Ireland in 1939. And so at the age of 5, my father arrives in this part of London called Dagenham, and went through the whole Second World War there. And the first dead body he saw was a German pilot landing in the park behind them. And but he would have been traumatized, from the age of 5, throughout the Second World War, because that part of London was heavily bombed. And I remember at the age of 9, we were living in Germany at the time. We would come back for Christmas. And I just remember standing there thinking, why would the nice German people want to, bomb the nice English people? I remember asking that question, stood opposite the house that my father had survived the war in. And so I've just thought, and my grandfather joined the British Army, and my father joined the army. And on my mother's side, I've got a Jewish relative, an Ashkenazi Jewish guy. He was a sniper in the Boer War. So I've got this on both sides of my family. I've got this kind of this warrior thread running through it. So I just joined it, but I was more of a full-time skydiver and part-time soldier really, but I enjoyed my brief career in the military. But then I saw a lot more combat after I left the military, working as a private contractor and as a photojournalist. But Remembrance Day, the purpose of Remembrance Day is to tell the people to really remember to forget. And everyone has to remember to forget, because once you study these things, you realize we don't live in a genuine democracy, so you have to forget that. And what we live in is really an oligarchy. We certainly don't live under a monarchy. So, but you have to forget that. You have to forget that you don't live under a democracy, you don't live under a monarchy, and that's it. And you conclude that you live in an oligarchy. But you have to forget all that on Remembrance Sunday, and you just have to remember the lie that everyone's being told. That your government is looking out for you, and democracy is real, and just trust us. We've got your back. We're the political class, we're the mainstream media, we are the academy, and just carry on being deluded, really. And so, I've never voted in my life, so I'm not. I don't believe in democracy. I'm a monarchist myself, but of course we don't have a genuine monarchy. But we do have Aristotle said, there are only 3 kinds of government, which are, monarchy, democracy, or oligarchy, and those are the only 3 really. And this whole thing about socialism and communism, well, that's oligarchy. Communism is just capitalism with the brakes off. And so that's a quote from Lenin, actually. Socialism is communism with the brakes on, he said. And the other great socialist communist Trotsky said, destroy everything. So that's really kind of at the heart of this agenda that's going on. And so, and I just really want to talk about, we're being lied to, and of course the officer class. Is it Lympstone? Where do the officers go in the Marines?
We all train at the
You go
same
to
place,
Saint?
Lympstone
Oh,
Commando.
oh, right, okay. Yeah, because so you got Sandhurst. I mean, my father sent me off to a private school in the hope that I'd become an Irish general in the British Army, which is the last thing I wanted to do. I just wanted to jump out of big airplanes and learn a bit about camping. But I just kind of saw through this whole thing in the military, um, that we don't the officer class don't tell the truth. If you look at, I mean, there's so many reasons for war. I mean, a big one, of course, is debt creation. But the esoteric aspect behind the central banks is really, you know, sacrifice to Moloch, really. I mean, warfare is a human sacrifice, but it's a great way of getting all nations in debt that are involved in that conflict. And so all our leaders, these Roosevelt characters and Churchill, they're all players. Tommy Robinson's a player. Um, Tommy Robinson's job is to make you think that a multicultural, multiracial, multi-religious, and multi-degenerate society can actually work. We just got to keep being nice to each other. Um, but it's never worked. I mean, it's an attack on nature, when you try and create such a society. But
Well,
nationalism, I know now,
Mike, if I can just
is
interrupt, Tommy's thing is creating the division between Christianity and Islam, and
well, it's divided anyway. I mean, he doesn't create division.
yeah, no,
You can't
what
assimilate the two, or integrate the two.
I'm pointing out the critique he's coming under is, hang on, why are you just focusing on this division? Why are you not talking about all of the illegal immigration? We're subject to it, from all walks of life and races and religions, yada yada yada. Why are you solely focusing on the one that's, some would argue, is most likely to stir up passions? But
Well, because they have yeah, no, and it's true. I mean, Islam was invited into Europe, invited into the UK by Fabian socialists. So they want Islam. They have to have more Islam in the West because they have to collapse the West. I mean, the people of European descent have really served their purpose. Their job has been to be pushed around the world by the central banks, to create places like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the USA. These are propositional nations. They're not real nations. And a nation is a genetic cluster. That's all a nation is. And as far as we can tell, according to geneticists and linguists, there's about 750 main genetic clusters in the world. But the UN only allows 200. And of course, the UN is the enemy of the nation state. The UN is a creation of Fabian socialists. And the purpose of the UN is to really manage the chaos created by the central banks. And I've got one friend right now. I mean, I've had friends over the years, but I still have a friend who's working in the UN in New York. And anyone who works with the UN, I mean, it's a great job and it's full of selfless, dedicated people, but it's organized crime. And if you want to keep your job, you just don't mention that because it's quite a good job. But it's not about the preservation of the nation state. It's not about preserving, strengthening, or defending any nation state. And its purpose is to bring about this kind of one world socialist dictatorship and warfare. These are just they're brought to you by Satanists, people who hate human life and hate nature. I mean, these the commanding heights of humanity is occupied by people who hate humanity and are willing to sacrifice, humanity. And we're going from, we've got human 1.0, and we're moving forward to this transhumanist agenda, which is a real thing. I mean, and I saw that living in Silicon Valley for all those years, just how they hate nature and they're literally trying to they've become their own messiah, whoever they are. And they're perfect in their eyes. They're perfecting nature. They're genetically modifying it and splicing it, and with robotics and everything. But it's a madness, and that's why because the nation state is the most powerful political force. Uh, and most, I mean, the heart of human beings isn't to attack the other. We want to visit the other. We want to welcome the other to come and visit us, but not to take over. And any military historian will tell you that immigration, illegal or legal, is warfare by other means. That's all immigration is. It's warfare by other means. Ask any Apache, ask any Comanche, ask any Maori. But it's so this whole idea of immigration, no, it doesn't work. But we should be free to travel all over the planet. It's a beautiful place, but we can't claim the whole thing as belonging to us as individuals, or even as our group collective. So I think it's just having a sensible talk, because nationalism is natural order. Even babies are racially aware. And so all this stuff, so we have to kind of work with nature rather than kind of attack nature by mixing everybody together, which is, Luciferian, satanic grasp on reality. And it's a sickness. It's a collective sickness that the commanding sites of all nations have been captured by, because because of the global financial system, and there's only one global financial system. It hates humanity. So it's like we have to flip the board and come up with something else. And so I think just looking like, what is a nation, and how best to strengthen it, and to preserve it and defend it, not only for the sake of itself, but for all nations of the world. Because that's why I encourage everybody to read the book Blip by Christopher Clugston, because since the 1920s, geological economists have been crying out to the world, we've gone too far. We can't fix this. The future for humanity, regardless of what Elon Musk tells you, and Silicon Valley knows this as well, is we're moving into a kind of a post-industrial future. And it's going to be kind of we're going to have to kind of, it's not back to the future. It's kind of, it's forward to the past in many ways. So the values and the understanding of the people, great people throughout the history and throughout humanity have had, and we listen to them. If a great letter, I think, is Chief Seattle, and his letter to the U.S. president at the time when they were trying to steal his land is so good. It's just a brilliant letter, because it's the voice of humanity. Humans don't hate each other. We're socially engineered, and we're to see the other as the enemy. And so I mean, they're just laughing at us, really. They've spent the last 20 years, bombing brown people all over the Middle East, and now they're bringing them into Europe, and. Yeah, it's tragic. It's tragic.
Would it be fair to say, Mike, that the best way, I'm going to use some profanity here, folks, just to make a point. I know I said I wouldn't swear, but there's one word that, would it be fair to say you don't, well, let me put it simply, you don't help the third world by making your country become the third world?
Yeah, and Africa is the way it is because no nation in Africa is governed by representation of the good, wise, and virtuous African people. But you could say that the same for every Western nation. It's the political class are just these kind of low-level bag people, bagmen. And
what I
bagwomen.
mean is, the way to help other nations who are struggling is A, stop bombing the shit out of them, B, stop robbing them, and C, stop letting everybody into your country thinking that that's somehow benevolent, when the reality is all you're doing is adding to the destruction of your own country, which ironically is becoming like the one that they believe they're fleeing from.
It's the brain drain of Africa. Not one nation in Africa had its border, or certainly sub-Saharan Africa had its borders determined by the African people. They're all just it's all City of London, and that's it. That's what the data tells us. So I mean, Nigeria is at least 3 to 4 countries, but there's so and I think that's what Gaddafi was trying to do was to, the African Union is like the European Union. It's the purpose of the African Union is to keep Africa down. The person of NATO, the purpose of NATO was to kind of keep Germany down and Russia out. So all these and they're all Fabian creations, all these globalist organizations. So it's so we have to go on, on solutions, for what's coming. But it's that Fabian thing. It's that they have to have chaos. They have to have this strategy of tension, and it's that Hegelian, problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialect. So, and that's all that's going on. But so few folk, they're so messed up. I mean, people really so many people genuinely believe that a man can become a woman. I mean, that's where we're at. And so this weaponization of autism and severe mental health challenges and the normalization of these things and the celebration of such things is the weaponization of them, because they're actually they're designed to fracture the society and to weaken it and make it less cohesive. What do we do about it? I think it's I I'd like to see I mean, I've got my own vision of ending all wars of aggression between nations forever, and that all nations become good stewards of the natural environment of their nation forever. And we can do that because that's in alignment with natural law, and that's in alignment with the symbiosis, which is it's our inevitable future. Is we will have to figure out somehow of becoming symbiotic. So the first thing is to stop these wars, is to have strong, secure borders. This whole open border fantasy is obviously, a fantasy, but and once again an attack on nature. But I'd love to see kind of a global military alliance to preserve the nation state. And to ensure that the political class and the mainstream media and the academy of every nation is populated with a representation of the good, the wise, and the virtuous of all nations. And it's like the military can do that. But it's we have to talk about the security services as well. The security services, they're all integrated, whether it be the SIS of MI5 and MI6 and CIA and Mossad. At the top, they're all integrated. I mean, some of the grunts on the ground, maybe not, but the commanding heights are certainly integrated. And I've worked in that world a little bit as a private contractor, so I had a slight, dip my toe in it, or maybe up to my knees, I guess. But yeah, these things are integrated. So we're just being lied to. These, they're not looking out. MI5 and MI6 are not looking out for the English, Welsh, and Scottish people at all. They are an enemy of those people, actually.
Well, yeah, we saw that on a certain event 20 years ago in New York and Washington, didn't we?
Yeah, it was the greatest hoax.
Let's not mention the little number, but you were a commercial pilot on that day, and you and I both know that blaming it on a guy in a cave on a kidney dialysis machine in deep dark Afghanistan, who managed to conduct the largest atrocity in recorded history without one single mobile phone call or one single bank transaction, while ironically people a lot closer to home knew well in advance what was going to happen, hence the massive shift on the stock market in the days building up to said event. So that if there wasn't proof that these intelligence agencies, A, don't work for us and B, work together, in addition to them the mouthpiece of the cabal, which is clearly the mainstream media, the likes of which broadcast the Salomon Building's collapse 40 minutes before it collapsed. So, yes.
Well, that was just to mock you. That was they put that out there just to mock you. And yeah, I know. Yeah, I was a pilot on that day, and I haven't flown since 2009 actually, but anyway, but I'm an ex-pilot, but I was a pilot on that day, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I knew that it was a hoax. As a pilot, I mean, all you have to do is know a bit about ground effect, and a few other things. But you, as a pilot, you know about ground effect. But yeah, I mean, I mean, maybe, yeah. Anyway, certainly by middle of that afternoon, I thought, no, this is an incredible hoax. How are they going to get away with this? Surely they can't get away with this. And so, it's like where are the officers in the British military that said, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
We can't go to war over this. And I mean, I knew a guy called Scott Ritter when I was in America, and he was the UN weapons inspector, and 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 he knew that there were no weapons of mass destruction, right? None, no evidence, no data. There were no, but we kind of went to war on that. And I mean, I think Scott's a bit of a player as well, to be honest. But he's a Marine. He had some fun story. He spent time in Lympstone, actually. I don't know if you ever met Scott Ritter, but
No, I only know he not the arms inspector, or am I getting
yeah,
my
he was worked for the UN as a chief. He was the chief weapons inspector,
yeah.
looking for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and there weren't any.
Well,
And
he
he
was
literally he had access to Saddam Hussein's toilet. I mean, there was nowhere he couldn't go. He could literally go everywhere.
yeah.
There were no weapons of mass
He
destruction.
was the first one to point out, or at least to me, that Netanyahu was behind the H people. Let's just call them that. Behind the formation of the H people, the control of them, and the funding of them. And when
Oh,
you saw,
massively. Well, yeah, massively. And it's like there's nothing happens. Like, talk about the Gaza Strip, but there's nothing happens in the Gaza Strip which belongs to Israel actually, and it is if you read the Quran, it is their land. I mean, it is their homeland. But it was conditional that they would kind of be a nation of priests, a holy nation, and of course, the Zionist state of Israel was never intended to be a Jewish homeland, because otherwise, it'd be living under the law of Moses, and it doesn't. But this nothing happens in places like the Gaza Strip that CIA, MI5, or MI6 and Mossad know about. I mean, that place is just so teched up. But so of course, October the 7th was allowed to happen,
absolutely,
because
absolutely.
it's that problem reaction solution again. So so where is the officer class? Where are our officers? I mean, our NCOs know a lot of this stuff, but where our officers should be saying no, no, their job is to really protect the troops, but they don't. They just go again into these wars. What is it? I think it was 80% of the student body of Oxford and Cambridge died in the trenches of the First World War. So literally, when universities really were about the brightest, so the brightest Scottish, Irish, English, and Welsh people at university at the time, 80% of them died. The brightest minds, before having children, and then the ones that went on to have children, that survived the First World War, their children got killed in the Second World War. So it's this kind of sacrifice to Moloch, this hatred for humanity.
And let's
Um,
not forget that these conflicts, they're also designed to take out all the fighters, all the alpha males, all the
yeah.
ones with the ability to maybe, maybe turn their guns the other way. And once you get rid of all of them, then you just have an even more docile population. Um,
Well, so the morale's most of my activism is with the police and with the Irish Defence Force, because I wore a uniform, so I know what it's like to be under orders, and morale is very low in the Irish police and the Irish Defence Force, and I'm sure it's the same in the UK, um, because they want Europeans out of the European military. They want Europeans out. They want the Irish out of the Irish military, and they want to bring in people from non-European descent, because Europeans have served their purpose. They've been forced around the world to steal all this land, And now that land has been occupied. They put in infrastructure, roads and rail and runways, and they can extract all the raw materials. And so they don't need the Europeans anymore. They need the bright ones, but they certainly don't need the vast majority. And so they're being eliminated. They've served their purpose. Europeans are less than wherever we've been displaced to around the world. We're about 8% of the world's population. And so we're very small. So the Enlightenment and with liberalism, all these things have been grinding away at our populations, and so we're in the home straight for this Luciferian satanic agenda. But I remain hopeful. I'd like to see a military coup in Britain to bring back genuine nationalism or genuine democracy, and to really be a voice, because the British military, more so than maybe other, they talk about the special relationship in America. I mean, the US is run out of the city of London. I mean, this whole idea that it's, and Wall Street bankers. I mean, as Anthony Sutton, read his work about how, these central banks basically funded communism, and all the tech. There was no such, the Cold War. I mean, the amount of high-tech stuff that was being transferred from America to Russia throughout the Cold War. I mean, it was all just a story. It's just, but it's important. It's a blood sacrifice, and you've been in. I certainly have been around enough screaming, dying people, and to know that it was all unnecessary. And I think the stuff that is the dying children that I've seen in Africa and elsewhere, but mostly in Africa, all unnecessary. And I think when you've held your own child, and when you've seen dying and starving children, completely rigged. Those images are, you think about them first thing in the morning, but just once, and it kind of lasts all day long. And that's the air beneath my wings, is to try and bring about change. It's for the sake of all children of the world. We've just been, and there's no politician you can turn to that you can admire. None of these, no senior military people, because, and I have great admiration for some of them to some degree, but what are they afraid of? What are they afraid of?
Serious question though, Mike. Do you really? I mean, I'm totally not against the military or whatever. To me, it's just a mute. It's their order followers living out of their ego, as you and I once did. Soon as Remembrance Day comes, they don't say, hey, do you know what? I'm not going to further establish the myth of war and the utter nonsense that these individuals died for our freedom, because they didn't. I mean, even go back to the Napoleonic War with the Rothschilds. They sent the carrier pigeon saying that the other side had won so that they could crash the stock market and then hoover up all the stock pennies on the pound to become incredibly rich. Then we had the situation in the Second World War where we've only been told the Hollywood side of it. When you start scratching beneath the surface and you find out the whole story, you start to understand the utter mammoth lies that virtually every service person just goes along with because they know no different. Every veteran goes along with. And then my point is, if you really cared about these, in some cases, the lads in the trenches in the First World War, they were like 14, 15, right? They were people's little boys, right? Children. If you actually cared, you'd never step foot on a remembrance parade ever again. Fucking cementing the cabals. They laughing at you with the numbers 11, 11, 11. That's their signature code. That, hey boys, big sacrifice. And they're doing it at the moment with bloody ostriches, for Christ's sake, under the guise that there's a mythical bogeyman that can jump from one creature into another and therefore you have to destroy the lot. Once you understand that is that's a complete. Well, I can't say it, but people know what I'm getting at. So all I'm just saying this, Mike, because I know there'll be people out there chomping at the bit saying, come on, fellas, let's call it out for what it is. It's a day where most veterans can't wait to just polish their medals and march up and down the square again, in public, with their boots nicely polished, so that everybody looks at them, and that's their thing. It's not my thing, Mike. If I'd won the Victoria Cross, I would never wear that. That to me would be the ultimate insult to the people that genuinely went off to war and got killed, is to wear the trinkets, or the indoctrinating trinkets of the cabal. And I'm not criticizing people, Mike, by the way. I'm just saying not everyone has this level of understanding, do they? And so when people say, Chris, when are the military coming to rescue us? I'm like, your military, they all support Israel. They can't. They just think, well, 20 years conflict in the Middle East against a certain religion. What's going on over there in that stolen state? Oh, yeah, it's that religion again. Therefore, they all must be bad. That's the simplistic nature of what not just veterans and service personnel, but quite a lot. I mean, it's been heartening to see how many people have actually said no. The genocide of men, women, and children, just nothing can justify that. The systematic torture and ape of prisoners just falls totally outside any kind of Geneva Convention, even if it wasn't a war that they created back in that, when the fence came down conveniently for 8 hours with no security on it. So, sorry, Mike, just I know you know all this. I'm just saying it for our friends at home that it's an ego trap. That Remembrance Day it's an ego trap. There's far better ways to remember your buddies that paid the ultimate sacrifice than Is
the frame? Is it less? Is it in England? Is it less we forget? Is that Remembrance Sunday? Less we forget.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I don't mind. You could just complete that sentence. It's like it's less we forget that all wars are bankers' wars, because that's what the data tells us. And let's just So there's another Marine. Is it? I don't know if you know him. Is it Mark Ormond? I think he got both his legs blown off and one arm blown off.
Yeah, Mark Ormrod. Yeah.
Mark Ormond? And I mean, what a powerful voice he would be if he was able to stand up and say. I mean, if it wasn't for the lie of that September morning in New York, if it wasn't for, he'd still have two legs and two arms, and you would have thought he'd be pretty motivated to stand up on veterans, on Remembrance Day and say, hey, listen to me, look at the state I'm in.
Yeah, well, a lot, I won't comment on Mark because obviously he's a brother of mine, but there's a lot of veterans out there that they get an awful lot of by towing the line to the narrative. But when I say toe the line, most people don't even understand that it's a narrative in the first place. I mean, and this it might sound like sour grapes for me. I'm just probably getting a bit shouty because I can, but this is why I always say spiritual battle, Mike, because I'm already saved. I don't need to do any saving. It's already done. But I do know people out there in the so-called awake community believe it's their job to go out and change everybody else. And I think that's admirable. But I think the better way to do it is the way that I do it, be the living example of what a spiritually enlightened individual is and how we live. Hence why I won't comment, people will notice. I don't mind a comment on Tony Blair or Starmer just because it's educational. You can't highlight the puppets of the cabal without kind of pointing at them. But I think
how do we fix it though? How do we fix it?
This is what I want to come on to. When you bear in mind that, and again, I mean no disrespect because it's not my business, but when the whole of the military is asleep, they slept through all the medical bullshit. They didn't even just sleep for it. They went along with it, hook, line, and sinker, and they put that horrible stuff, into their boys and their girls. The most hideous ritual sacrifice in plain sight that you could ever bloody put together, and not one of them click that this isn't right, then I think it's a massive ask expecting other people to wake up to the knowledge that you've got. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. There's when people are ready, they hook onto people like us. I totally get that. But this is the fascinating thing. This is it's just interesting, Mike. The reason I talk about, when I say spiritual battle, I just mean understand energy, vibration, and frequency, because that's how this construction that we're all a part of works. So you can either do what works, or you can be deluded and go about bashing your head against the wall. Having said that, I love putting on Twitter. Well, I don't love putting on Twitter, or X as it's called. I'm highly curious to see that a lot of people are getting called out on it now. People that traditionally had privilege, they had protected status. Don't ask me why. Well, I mean, I know why, but they developed this mythical protected status that meant nothing. We weren't allowed to question anything. It was almost ridiculously. It was so stupid. It had to stop working at some point. It was so clear to anyone with even basic intelligence, you're being gaslit and you're being sold a narrative that wasn't true. So I think it's fascinating. It's brilliant to see Israelis stand up in Parliament and call out Netanyahu and say, you were behind that event. We all know it. And you are an evil Satanist and you do not represent the people. Sadly, there's a lot of incredibly indoctrinated people in certain communities. When you have victim mentality, you are a dangerous person, because victims always blame others. It's always everyone else's fault, and therefore they believe they have carte blanche to do anything they want on It's like someone who grows up poor saying, "Well, fuck the guy whose car I stole because he's privileged and I'm not." This kind of thing. So it's interesting. I say start with a spiritual battle, because that's a win-win. Set yourself free, especially if you're in anxiety about what's going on in the world. It's a much better place to start from, being at peace in your heart with it all. But then, don't get me wrong, I'm a scrapper, Mike, aren't I? I've been in conflict. In my heart, I'm not afraid of anything, because I can't be. And I'm a father as well, which is my main, so I don't mind calling out the nonsense as I see it. And I think I do a bloody good job on this channel. The merchants don't slip one by me. I seen who was behind those aeroplanes that fateful day. I seen who owns the medical companies. I see who controls the huge financial portfolios on the planet. If you can't see that they're a network and they hate you, and they're Satanists or Satanists, part of the cult of Saturn, then you're probably never ever gonna see it. So, like, what I'm saying is as above, so below. Do the spiritual stuff, and do the material stuff as well, but don't be getting upset about the material, because you go and try and wake up the military, you're going to get quite upset. You go and try and wake up the average person, they'd be like, sorry, what? Cult of Satan? What the fuck are you talking about? You are meant, this is like, we've all been through it. And of course, that's the privilege of being a true chosen one, is you were chosen to have this knowledge and they weren't. And what does that say? It says that, something to be proud of, not to go feeling bad about. But sorry, Mike, let's come on then. So remigration has become a big thing. There's Twitter accounts now with, I think, hundreds of thousands of people, and they're saying remigration now. If I use the expression this lot come here illegally, weren't invited, and not welcome here by a significant percentage of the host population, not everyone. And I know that you had a plan along those lines, so I just wondered if we could discuss that.
Yeah, I think I put it up on McCarthyplan.com. I think I don't know if that's still up there, but that was just. This is something I think since I think I wrote it down in 2020.
Just give us the outline, Mike. I'll have a look for it while we're speaking.
I think it's just conversations I've had in mostly wars that I've been to around the world, and just chats with Muslims and Christians and Buddhists and all the different folks, Jewish people, just like how to make a better world. We realize that you're either for open borders or you're for nation states, and you've traveled extensively, more than most people. And so I like the idea of preserving nation states, these genetic clusters. And it's so for me, it was the chat I've had. This is going over years, really. I guess it's since the 1980s. But I wrote it down in 2020. I thought I've got to write some of these notes down, and so my friends around the world, Jewish and non-Jewish, and Christians and animists and atheists, I guess a few of them, or maybe agnostic. I don't know if I know any atheists, but they're agnostic. So I kind of put the vision down, and I just would write different ideas, and whatever went up there had approval of friends of mine, people of very worldly and maybe more life experience than me, but and a lot of them are combat veterans as well. And I'm not against the military at all. I enjoyed my brief career of soldiering. I'm really kind of proud of my service, and I admire anyone, particularly if they're in elite forces, because it's pretty it's challenging, and you really get to know yourself when when you think you're at your limit and you go a bit further, and that's a wonderful mental. I love that feeling of going beyond the envelope and seeing what you can do. But
Mike, let me just
soldiering is an essential thing. But for me, it's our military should just be there for defense, for defending our nation, for defending our children and our communities. And the best way to defend your community is so that other nations, other communities don't, especially the ones that you border with, or you have a shared border with, if you don't live on an island, don't feel threatened by you. They see a symbiotic relationship with you. You're their neighboring nation, and so nationalism is about protecting these borders. And then once again, the challenge for humanity is to determine where these borders are. I was with the Sudanese People's Liberation Army years ago in Sudan. I was when John Garang was running things, and anyway, I was there with Abdulaziz. He was running the military in southern Sudan, and then that was that. Now it's two countries. Now it's North Sudan and South Sudan, and we all thought, oh, it's going to be wonderful now. Everyone now. No. It just fell apart because once again the oligarchs take over. And So yeah, I just think that there's that plan. I just want people to debate it and rip it to shreds. And so it's not my ideas. It's just it's ideas that have been percolating away and have a foundation in reason, and are supported by many friends of mine around the world of all races. What works, what doesn't work, and just to be honest, and so this whole kumbaya. And I mean, do you believe in the nation state? Are you for open borders?
Um, well, it doesn't really matter what I believe. What I'd say matters, Mike, is that you and I both know that this, whatever we're going to call it, cabal, the merchant class, the network, the Babylonian woe. Great book, incidentally, folks, if you want to get a bit of a grasp of me and Mike's understanding. The Babylonian woe, I'm showing it on the screen now. There's a link in the comments below. It's in my Amazon shop. I might make a few pence off you if you buy a copy, so I want everyone watching this podcast to go and buy a copy, please. But no, what I'm saying, Mike, is you and I both know that this goes back thousands of years to when they took control of the money supply. We also know the indoctrination program is so heavy. We've got a culmination here of your Bavarian Illuminati, so the light bringers. You've got the Sabbatean Frankist, or aka the cult of Saturn, which so many people watching tonight are fully aware of. So big up you guys that have done the research. And of course, we've got the backing of the European banking aristocracy, the likes of the Roths and all this kind of lot. And they've put together a new world order that, it's not new. It's been in play now for thousands of years. And my question, Mike, is, or my point would be, I know your efforts are admirable. You just read this plan and you can see a lot of thoughts gone into it. My sort of probing is, how the hell do you ever expect this to get implemented when most people, his biggest concern of their week is what time Strictly Come Dancing is on? Mm-hmm. And then if you take the awakened community, at what point are they all going to stop fighting between themselves, because none of them can agree on anything? Some of them think the world's flat, and other such things, and they hate the rest of, and they believe that they're the bona fide truthers. So much so, many of them physically detest anyone that doesn't believe the world is flat. It's a shit show out there. The reason is because, as I say many times, all being awake is that you've woken up in the Matrix. That's all it means. Doesn't mean you're enlightened of any form. Right? It just means that you realise when your loved ones fall down dead because of certain medical shit, it's probably time to wake the fuck up, right? That's all it means. It doesn't mean that you understand anything, that you, and like I say, the magic happens when you take that step out of your 3D material self, your five senses. You learn to meditate and to fast. You step aside and you step out of this body, rather, and you realize that you're just a divine manifestation of the all, the everything. Referred to in scripture as God, and that if you live the Christic, the sacred secretion, the serotonin and the DMT, by living a Christ-like existence, that you will get different results in life. I'm not talking about going to a church and singing Kumbaya, folks. I'm talking about physically, change your diet, get your pH in balance, practice humbleness, practice love of all people, moderate exercise, all these things I talk about a lot. And so just going back to my original point, Mike, and this is not a dig whatsoever, I'm curious what you've put, and I've been showing it to our friends at home, your plan on your website. It's admirable. It's what so many people want, right? I'm not saying all of it, folks. I haven't read all of it. I'm just saying the principle of, hey, if you've come here and you're not welcome, that it might be time to totter off and go and build your own country back up. What I'm saying, Mike, is there's a big disconnect here between this plan being put into operation and the absolute, what's that word, apathy of this nation. Like, no one even gives a shit. Most don't even have any clue that there's an immigration problem. Those that do tend to be ones that have been riled up by certain characters in the media, and I'm not saying it, with all the freaking stabbings and apparently rape has gone up from the hundreds to the multi-thousands. And I get it. I've been in tribal places. Don't want to pick on any particular country, but I think everyone knows if the situation in England at the moment. I've been to those tribal places, folks. I totally get it, right? So the disconnect, Mike. How are you going to get people onto this plan?
Well, it's just a conversation, is it, Chris? I mean, my hope and prayer is that there is a genuine, a global organization that genuinely, deeply loves humanity and loves Earth, loves the world. And it's that's why, just get back to blip, we're if we're to live symbiotically and peacefully with each other, there have to be the creation of global organizations that are not tools of the central banks. And that's it. And I think that foundational text of the Babylonian Woe, it's such an essential read, because you're right, it goes back thousands of years, and I'm just hoping that maybe, and my heart is that military leadership, because the only thing that can stop a man is another man, right? I mean, you're a fighter. And it's a very small group of men that are sort of the leading architects of this. And there's many more good people on the planet than pure evil. I know that. I mean, you know that. You see the humanity in people, and we love to meet the other. We love to go and travel around the world. But I think humanity's getting at a point now where it's been a hell of a ride. I mean, so the party's over. So we can't. That's why we just got to study geological economists and what they're saying. And you've got friends, I'm sure, in maritime security, because a lot of Marines, end up doing that. And I've got friends in both, in that and mining security. So we are coming, to the end of a realization that yes, the party is over. So we better get our act together. Because it will fall apart. And when it falls apart, it goes tribal. It's fallen apart anyway. I mean, it's gone tribal in the UK. I mean, the balkanization of the United Kingdom is happening now, and the balkanization of towns within the UK is happening now, and it is, you speak to any police officer, it's impossible to effectively police the kind of society that is being created. It's impossible to effectively police it. And a lot of these police officers, they have daughters as well. But you can't make it in the West if you're in any state, if you're in the military or the police or any state body, you cannot get promoted in that world if you're not woke. You have to be woke, or be going along with it. I mean, it's and that's what's happening certainly in elite forces. Elite forces are being told to go woke. And that does in that world it might not, it might work in other units, but in elite units, no, they want to be effective, and that you know they want to be cohesive. They do very dangerous things. Um, they don't want to be politically correct. They just want to stay alive and be successful. But your career is you're tagged. If you're not on board with that, if you're not politically correct, you're tagged. So that's why it's always been a problem for elite forces to retain their to retain their men, but it's getting even harder now because they're realizing. Um, I mean, there's more troops being killed in elite forces now than ever. You know. Um,
Mm.
Whether it be in
Still,
Hereford or it's yeah, so it's how are we going to get it? I think just get the military to wake up, get the people who truly are on the front line and doing the worst of things and working. I mean, the elite forces work for the central banks, and all the intelligent community is really working for the central banks. It doesn't work for the nation. It works for the state, but the state doesn't work for the nation. The nation are that genetic cluster, but the state doesn't work for that genetic cluster. The state in the West is an enemy of that genetic cluster, very much so. And it's only the military that can stop this. The military would really are in a position to stop this, but will they ever? I mean, you've got so many people in the senior command that are members of secret societies. How can you have that? That can't be allowed. And I mean, you can't allow any secret society to exist within your civilization at all. I mean, there should be military secrets, and there are, the police hold files and all that. There's a place for keeping things from the public, but no, there should be no secret societies in any civilization because that doesn't strengthen your civilization. There's some group operating, you know, behind the curtain. Then that we need to see behind the curtain, and so it's the military because when you leave the military, and I'm sure you've got friends, I dip my toe in it, but a lot of, particularly if you're in elite forces, you go on the circuit and there's so much work in close protection and surveillance and training foreign militaries. I mean, just an immense amount of work, and you're getting paid a lot more money than you would in the military. Um, and so you go behind the scenes, and you're either looking after these billionaires or you're spying on them, and they're spying on their staff. I mean, there's just so much work, and so particularly British, well, any elite forces, but Western elite forces, because we're behind the curtain and when we leave the military, and so we see what's going on, and so the veil is lifted, and we can kind of see through the fog, and now we need to speak out, and that's why your channel is so important because you give a voice to people who've done that, and maybe you can get some. I mean, I know people right now, who are looking after some very powerful people, political and the billionaire class. But um, man, I mean, we could fix this. I mean, what a beautiful world we can create. But we have to understand that it can only be created when we get genuine global institutions in there that deeply care about humanity. And the UN is not that. I mean, the UN is the enemy of humanity. And I don't know. It is frustrating because we have children, and yeah, and it's we have to do something for their sake, and I love soldiering, and I have great admiration for the warrior class, as warriors. But to be real warriors, they have to call out the real enemy, and that's the central banks and the esoteric aspect that drives the central bank. So these secret societies are just they're controlling that kind of the communist capitalist,
Do you know?
Islamic. They're juggling, they're controlling all of it, and they've infiltrated the commanding heights of all of these things, and they're just playing with us, but they're pretty sick people, and that's why when you see these politicians, and when you worked in the world of surveillance and close protection, you realize, I worked for a U.S. congressman and a presidential candidate, and it's all theater, man. It's the whole thing is theater. Um,
I just wanted to
but it's what you're doing is the most important thing. It's really important, but we've
yeah,
got to get a bit more organized.
you're very kind to say that. I've been through, I've been on a journey where I'm very fortunate to be in a place where I realise my old ways, my old ego ways aren't going to work. I've got to be honest. I've got to speak from the heart and always be in service to others. And that's why I'm an open book, and I just say what I see. Probably, a little bit limited by certain platforms as a thinker, but I think I get the message across. It made me chuckle then when you said it about the military's got to wake up to the esoteric, secret societies. Do you know the biggest society in the SAS is the Freemasons, and it's it's big. My buddy Matt was saying that in at Hereford you can see a trooper bollocking like a warrant officer, and when you're new to all of this, you walk past going, "Hang on, that's not how it works." What? And then you learn later that he might be a trooper, he might be a warrant officer on the barracks. When they're in the lodge, the roles are reversed, and of course, who do you swear your allegiance to first? You swear it to your secret society upon pain of death. And I don't know how, what's the word? How much bullshit there is in that expression, but it's So yeah, and I'm not knocking Masons or the SA. I just believe let everybody do their thing. I wake up in paradise every day because that's the life I created by tuning in.
I can't hear you, Chris.
Say again.
I can't hear you.
Okay.
You just jumped back in. You just jumped back in.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was, but okay, Mike, listen, I'm going to wrap it up there because you've got to get away and enjoy your evening, and I've got to go and relax a bit. I think it's been a great chat. You're always incredibly knowledgeable, and I know that my subscribers really appreciate it. I think we need to be working on the how next, because the plan's there, the situation's there. I'd like to be looking at the fall of Rome and why do things change, and why does life, if life goes in cycles, maybe we just keep doing our thing, we be patient, and possibly, Mike, we'll be long dead in this form when change for our children comes around, and I can live with that. I also prefer the kind of eternal life.
The collapse of all of this is part of the cure, isn't it? So we have to look forward to the collapse, and but I think trying to have in place that idea of perpetual peace and symbiosis with all of humanity and the earth, just kind of keep that vision going. And but yeah, the collapse is the cure, isn't it? But the technocratic types will try and keep it together, and but eventually, nature takes it back. But there's this world, and there's the next world, and I believe that And that was the teachings of the ancient, the original Abrahamic faith, not the Judaism and the Christianity and the Islam, which are kind of a kind of an offshoot of the original Abrahamic faith. But in the original Abrahamic faith, which didn't have a name for the Creator, that I think they just called it, or they described it as the power of all powers. I am that I am. But what they said that all right, regardless of your ethnicity or race or whatever, but all righteous people have a place in the world to come. And so I totally believe in that. And so that's why we can't fill our hearts with hate for whoever these people are that cause all this trouble. But have some kind of compassion for them and collectively try and figure out how we can kind of identify and I guess just restrain them, isolate them and restrain them somehow. But yeah, check out McCarthyPlan.com. It's a work in progress, and but its foundation is built on love, and that's it. That's where I come from.
Thank you, Mike. I'm just going to just hold the line, Mike, while I just play us out. I'm just going to do some shout outs. Friends, if you could please like and subscribe. As you probably worked out already, you're not really going to hear this kind of stuff. Not the whole shebang, including the energy battle that we're facing. You're not going to hear it on many channels. If you can like and subscribe, that'd be awesome. I always say, friends, if you want to join our monthly Zoom meeting, etc., please support us on either by becoming a YouTube member. It's only £1.99 a month. Or on Patreon, or on Locals, which is our free speech channel, or you can support me on Buy Me a Coffee. That would really help things along. Can I just give a shout out for our Arctic Legends trip? Myself and my two fellow former Royal Marine Commandos will be taking 12 lucky men. This time it's men. If you're a girl and you want to go, send me an email. I'll put you down for the next trip. 12 lucky men up to the Arctic Circle. We'll be staying in this luxurious outdoor centre. There's my boys. We've all been working hard to put this package together. We'll be teaching you skiing, survival, how to go through the ice, etc. We had a magnificent Northern Lights last time. That is actually, I think, one of the photos I took. First week in March, folks. Early bird price is $1,999, so $1,999, which includes all your training, which we're starting in January. So to get 3 former Royal Marines Commandos at your disposal to train you up before we go, that's a very good price, is what I'm trying to say. So send me an email or send me an email. And that's that. Massive thank you again to everybody that's chucked a $5 in the pot for my upcoming Mount Everest summit to shine a light for our struggling veterans, raise the link between childhood experiences, bad ones or adverse ones, and complex PTSD, because no one's talking about it, and we're losing a lot of blokes. Mainly blokes, the odd female too, but it's mainly blokes, and no one's like questioning it. Why do we lose so many Royal Marines? It's a bit bizarre that no one's talking about this, and I'd say we gotta start talking about this. So there's a link below, folks, if you can chuck me a $5. Right, that's it. Okay, Mike, I'm gonna play us out. If you need to go, Mike, by all means do. If not, just give me a minute and I'll be with you. Much love, brother. Much love, everyone at home. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Awesome.
Morning, legends. I'm Chris Thrall. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando. Upon leaving the forces, ended up chronically mentally unwell. self-medicating, undiagnosed trauma and homeless on the streets of Hong Kong. It was the toughest battle I ever had to fight, but without the support of the medical community, without self-help groups, I learned the answers to rebuild my life and go on to complete a series of extreme charity challenges to send a vital message out there for other veterans who are struggling. I've run the length of the United Kingdom, run across the Sahara Desert, rode across the Atlantic Ocean. Now I'm taking on my biggest challenge yet, climbing Mount Everest. If you can support me, friends, and continue to shine a light for our struggling veterans and let them know there is life after PTSD, I'll put a link below. Can spare a fiver? That's absolutely fine. And let's give our veterans the respect that they deserve. Much love.
No matter